Verbum choice. Take one.
It's not choice.
Not choice. It's
We can be who we are.
we can be who we are.
Because who else can we be?
That is the
You're-
question, is it not?
You're
I
back.
don't want to sit at this table.
You're
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Look at that.
Look at that.
I'm all the way down here.
Okay, can we do something?
Please.
Okay, here, can you stand up? Let me get rid of this chair.
We talked about this
Right here.
table.
Stand. Perfect. All right. So Tess will be standing tonight. Actually, I did want to kind of try to make a change tonight. Anyways, I actually would like you to kind of sit down here
Oh,
and
thanks.
direct the conversation while I kind of just sit back and watch.
Okay.
But what we're going to actually first do, so actually if you want to sit down there, we'll
Yeah.
actually make a change simply because of the height issues, height
That you
challenge
have.
issues.
I don't have that
And
talent issues.
what I think what we can do is we'll have Chris come join Tess there at the table, and we'll bring Dave to sit at the head table now. You're like in the position of power. I mean,
No.
Beautiful.
So
Christian
we're like a
Dave,
W.
You're like
Tall, short, tall, short.
This is
There you go.
all you. All right, so we're back. I mean, this has got to be. It's something you guys do every week, so this is easy. This is normal for you guys. You're good. And we're here tonight, and we're going to talk first about the Global Revolution Comics, which is a project that they've been working on for about a year, and I'll let them tell you all about that. And then we're going to move into a conversation that is kind of themed choice. Is it good for society?
All right. So I'm taking it away about Global Revolution Comics right now?
I guess Tess is technically taken away because she's co-host, but it looks
Okay.
like you just took it away. I don't know.
This is the problem with choice. We're already stuck. That's why
We're
I'm against
already
it.
stuck.
Well, actually,
Should we
the
put
problem
one?
isn't choice, it's actually dictatorship. Because
what
this
it
is
is.
not what we normally do. So
Okay.
this isn't choice.
Tess, I've already been on and talked. Why don't you take it away? You're driving, right?
Okay.
I thought you guys were just going.
Okay. We're going.
Tell
Okay.
who are you now?
Yes, we should figure out who we are.
Yeah.
We just shook hands and met. I'm Chris McCamick. Global Revolution Comics is a little project that Dave and a few other people and I are working on together.
Hi, Dave.
Shout out to Naquasia, who's in Chicago today.
Yay,
shutting down
Chicago!
McDonald's. And yeah, we've been gestating it for about a year, getting the right people together, getting the right direction, website, etc. And today is a big day because we have launched our webcomics, The Unionizer, which is a character that Naquasia and her friends Anthony and Maurice came up with. And Dave has put out the first episode of Kafka.
Okay.
So that's a journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, and we've taken 2 today. So that's big.
Very nice.
So are these sort of, what do they call them? What do you call those? Like The Walking Dead, what do they call those kind of comics?
Graphic novels?
Is it graphic novel?
Right now, it's a weekly webcomic.
Okay.
Because we're all broke.
Well, we're all broke.
Everybody's broke. That's why we have a Global Revolution Comics, and we have a Global Revolution project going on, because globally everybody's broke.
Right.
So, we looked into kickstarting a hard copy and talked to people in the business and got the advice, and what we figured out was that the capital hurdles were high enough that we probably wanted to just do something we could do low cost and build relationships and show people where we were going.
Okay.
We got some great stories to tell. We're happy to be starting them up. Folks should go check them out at globalrevolutioncomics.com.
So you guys are doing guerrilla comics.
I guess you could call them guerrilla comics.
Yeah, we're doing guerrilla TV.
There you go. Everything's guerrilla now.
Yeah, because no one has any money.
Exactly. Yeah, you figure it out how you can figure it out.
Okay, so how did the group meet? You said there's a couple of people in Chicago. Did you guys meet online or?
Well, actually, I met Naquasia last year when she came to Rochester to be the keynote speaker for Metro Justice's annual dinner. Naquasia's a wonderful young woman,
Okay,
very bright. She represented the Fight for 15 on the Colbert Report last year.
okay,
Beautifully, great job.
all right.
And she's got a heart of gold in her head screwed on straight. I'm so glad to be writing comics with her because the stories wouldn't be what they are without her voice.
And what are the stories based on?
Well, right now, what we have coming for people is a story about the fast food workers and their struggles and how they build their lives together and try to make a way out of no way. And the unionizer is a hero that has been with working people throughout history, and when their hour of greatest need comes up, the unionizer comes to help them out. And he or she, because the unionizer actually manifests, you know what, I don't want to give this away too much.
Okay.
Number one, because of the suspense, and number two, because I'm not prepared and I would do it completely wrong. It's going to sound lame and you're not going to read it. You want to read it.
But is part of that also to teach young people the importance of unions?
I would say more than unions, because I feel, I can't speak for the other co-creators. This is something that we come together on, and all of our voices are a part of it. But I feel that unions are a symptomatic response that starts to solve the problem. And the larger problem is, for too long, we have allowed single people to control too much. And that can't happen anymore. Having better group decision making is actually how things happen in reality.
Right.
It's interesting to me as I've gone through life, so much of what you figure out is that we talk this capitalist talk of the marketplace and personal responsibility and how you're supposed to earn and make buying decisions, and that's how you say what you want the world to be. But that's what's publicly stated. But when you get into business environments, you very quickly understand that in fact things happen according to social logic. People are considerate of each other.
Sometimes.
That is, sometimes.
I've been in some of those meetings and they're not very.
And sometimes they're not considerate at all.
Right.
But that's, when you think about those situations that come up all the time, and you observe the way that people from the bottom to the top, whatever decisions they're making, are supposed to be made according to a certain etiquette to make sure everything's fair according to market logic, and we call it corruption when it's not. I don't think it's actually corruption. I think it should be that we talk amongst ourselves and have social consideration for why we do the things we do. But we have to publicly say that. And if we publicly say that, then we're going to commit ourselves to being more inclusive and kind. And there's some people, frankly, that I don't want to make accusations. I think their behavior makes it hard to believe they think that. I'm disappointed in that.
Yeah, well, you know what, the reason I asked that about teaching young people about unions is, and I know it's bigger than that, and part of it is that many young people don't even know how unions came to be or why. And so when there's an opportunity for them to unionize, they don't understand what purpose it originally served.
For me to hear, yeah.
So what they do when given the choice, they say, no, I don't want the union because now I have to pay union dues. But that's because they don't understand the history of unions and why they came to be. And what led up to the unions is the broader issue that you're trying to get to. And so I think that it can be, when you say unionizer, the unionizer, it has very different meaning to me than maybe someone that's 15 years old. Because the first thing I think of is the history of unions and how they came to be, and why the unionizer would be the hero that comes along, whereas a young person may not know any of that.
All right, with that, I kind of want to take a quick jump, and we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll continue the conversation, for-profit advocacy, and when we get back from that conversation, really, if you will, that's kind of what the conversation we just can easily hear from that, and I don't think that's a bad thing. But when we come back, I just want to make sure that you're getting out what you want people to be aware of with Global Comics, so that we can then jump later on into that later conversation. So
sure,
you go with that?
Yeah, that's
okay.
I mean, I've had a chance to make the pitch straight up.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I felt bad that I talked for so long because you came back with exactly what I needed to be reminded of. That was what Equasia told me. And, I come in as my piece of the creator, and those are the issues that's why we're a team.
Okay.
Those have to come back up.
Yeah, I think that those are critical.
When we come back, then, let's hear Dave's voice.
Yeah.
So let's just take a quick break, and, I want to make sure that Dave gets a chance to kind of Okay, we're back, and I'm with Dave, but you can't yet talk because Chris actually has to introduce it, right? Because we don't know who you are. He just sat over there and said like, hey, wait, this is a great conversation. Who's that guy, Ron, here with us? You know.
There you go. Okay, I'm addressing this camera. I want to introduce your audience, Chuck, to Dave Ryan, an up-and-coming writer who I've had the pleasure to be working with for a few months now. Dave is the creator of Kafka.
Here.
Yeah, we're over here.
Dave's the creator
Alright,
of Kafka, and I'm going to turn the floor over
We're
to you.
calling it Kafka now?
Welcome
I mean,
to
the last
Kafka.
conversation we had, it was Welcome to Kafka. Was the,
Well, I'm sorry. See, I'm doing it wrong. Welcome to Kafka.
Welcome to Kafka.
I vote welcome, Kafka. What do you think?
So what is Kafka?
Thank you for asking, Tess. It's just a weekly comic strip, you know, like where these characters are working in, you know, basically like a Kroger's if it were in a Franz Kafka short story. And, you know, so like I had this idea of like, you know, take all the basic things that happen in your like ordinary like job that just sucks, like just all of it exaggerated to a hellish degree, and then like put basically the Peanuts gang inside of this happening, you know. So as I was like thinking about how I would describe it and preparing for this conversation, I thought like, well, basically it's like Peanuts for the American worker, and then it's like wait a second. That's been our economic policy for the past 40 years, right? Peanuts for the American worker, and you know, like. And
Well, the way you described it, the first thing that came to mind for me, because I just watched Office Space again for the 100th time. And so that's how I related what you said, because it deals with the absurdity of working in an office and the dynamics, the managerial dynamics and all stuff like that. So I related it to that when you said that. So I get it.
right, exactly. But as I was saying, you know, Peanuts for the American worker has been, you know, the policy that we've been following, you know, since the Reagan days and before. I don't know, you know, like you look into the history of it, everybody wants to argue about who started neoliberalism and everything. But whatever the point is, that, you know, for at least as long as I've been alive, the policy has been, you know, like, let's just keep giving everything to the corporations, and let's make it easier to get rid of American jobs and pay everybody less and everything like that. Let's kick the unions down, and we're pretty sure that that's going to work out great for everybody at some point down the road. You know, it's always like, let's just keep doing it this way. And then, you know, after the economy crashes and all that, nobody has any money anymore. We're just going to keep doing it that way, because that's actually what we've been doing for the past 8 years.
We
Well,
all just have to believe hard enough.
Yeah,
You
right.
probably won't keep doing it that way, because there was a couple of things that you said that made me think of some things. One of them, because when Reagan came to office, there was a couple of things he said that were red flags. One was, I want to take us back to the good old days. And so many of us thought, well, who's good old days?
Yeah, right.
Because if you're talking about the days I think you're talking about, those were not my good old days, number one. And then the other thing he said, he was going to destroy all the unions. And he proceeded to do that with the air traffic controllers and all those sorts of things. And so, and then the other thing, having worked as long I did, and then the kinds of jobs that I had, which was administrative, managerial, I would say that I don't think that the idea was we'll just keep doing it this way and in the end it will work out. I would argue that it was a lot more devious than that, a lot more selfish than that. Being in positions where I actually saw salaries from the top to the bottom and found out and learned clearly what a golden parachute was. And so, and being a participant in meetings where those kinds of people's lives were being discussed as if they were not people. And so it isn't, you made a good point, but all I'm saying is it isn't as innocent as you made it sound.
Right, well, you know, it's,
Wow.
And I know you didn't think it was innocent.
And let me just
Came
quickly
on and
say-
you told Dave he was not bitter enough. You haven't even read his
no one
script
has
yet.
ever
But
said.
I don't, but see, I don't really even think it's bitter, it's just having knowledge.
Yeah.
It's having knowledge.
And
that-
here we have at this table the absolute certainty of what has caused all the downfall in America.
Well, and you know,
Oh, sorry.
you know my philosophy on the continuum. I have a theory. I don't really think it's a theory, but
Okay.
again, based on history, we're an empire. I responded to somebody on, because it's very rare now that I will get into the comments back and forth on Yahoo.
Mhm.
And so finally, and when I think I had the third reply, I said, you know what? None of this really matters. What I think, what you think, because this empire is going to fall anyway. And
Oh,
at
yeah.
some point, no matter what anyone thinks or says, it's going to be relevant. So we're just the ants that are either fiddling while Rome burns, or we're the
Okay.
ants that are being burned by the ash that's coming down from
This
the
sounds like
volcano.
perfect. Do you mind if I jump in at this
Come
point?
on in.
Because I want to come back to what Chuck was asking me to hold the thought of about hope. And this is something that we've been talking about amongst ourselves and talking to our, the people we're building this out to,
Mhm.
that, we've had, during this whole period, we've just been discussing in the political terms,
Mhm.
where you see the political actors that cause the changes.
Right.
We also have seen from Hollywood and from the entertainment space a lot of cautionary tales about where we're headed. Soylent Green, The Matrix, Terminator, Running Man, you
Well,
could go
that's
on
the
and on.
whole purpose of science fiction. I mean, that is what science fiction does
That's
for
it.
us.
I think it's one of the things.
You
science
can,
fiction-
well, it does much more, but I mean, you could go further back. You could go as far back as Buster Crab and, Flash Gordon and all those things or Star Trek, they had the tricorders and now we're on our little picture phones and, but it's always this, and I have to clarify this. I am not one that does not have hope. Okay?
Did you see that look?
Yeah.
Did you see that look?
I-
You just
Wait,
got-
did you see it? I just thought,
Because you said,
I did this
you
look,
no,
I
you
didn't
said,
say anything.
Wait.
Wait, no, when
No,
we're
wait,
going to
wait.
break, and
I
when
know.
we come back,
okay,
Tess can talk about her hope, which is fantastic. I hope she has hope. I mean, all right, we're going to a quick break. All right.
discounted. For my own sanity, I discount it. But I think the role of the person who is teacher, educator, and I don't mean just a classroom, but teacher, educator, hopeful, survivor, is to give people knowledge, give them understanding. And I think the most important thing is understanding history. They need to understand, because we're talking about a topic, but no one understands the history, then when it gets changed. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, I thought I was a history buff. I took a healthcare and the law class.
Yeah, we're gonna come back.
Okay, hold on.
We're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about hope and choice. Choice, whether it's a good thing for society, and we have Chris here to argue against that. And the sad part is, I'm gonna be right there alongside you, because I think we have to actually surrender our choice in order to have hope. And with that, we're going to go to Tess, who says, you do have hope, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think my hope is more about survival instinct than anything else. I am the child of someone who says you never give up. I am the child of someone who says never mind all that, you just keep moving forward. So that's why I talk about this noise, this extraneous noise, these barriers that try to sway you from doing what you know you need to do when you know you need to do this. And so you just kind of push that aside. I mean, I think I've been fortunate in a lot of ways. I know I've been fortunate in a lot of ways, because I didn't know. I knew something of government, but it wasn't until I lived in Alaska and had the opportunity to be in a very small state and actually see how government works. And it allowed me to put a lot of things into perspective of when someone gives up and gives us that 2-minute speech, what they're really saying, yeah, right, this is what happened. I know that this is what happened, but I know why you're saying what you're saying. And I was very, very fortunate to have worked for 2 people who just, taught me all those things, but then I was in an environment, a totally political environment, without being political. I call it Alaskan politics from the peanut gallery sort of thing. Just being able to be an observer and learn, because I think that's really the key. But you never give up.
Oh, no, never.
Knowing it's all gonna fall apart doesn't mean I give up, but I know it's all gonna fall apart.
That's.
Can I pop in?
Pop in.
Please.
It's I want to
It's
respond
just that
to
you're so far
you were
away.
talking about that a bit during the little break there, and you said just because I say it's an empire and it's all going to fall doesn't mean that I don't have hope. But I was like, I think that's the most hopeful thing that you have said or could say. Like the idea, the knowledge that the empire is going to fall is a very hopeful position.
Well, it is, because once it falls, that's when all that other stuff gets out of the way.
Right.
And people say, how are we going to survive? The only way we're going to survive is we all do this. Because now there's nothing left to fight over. It's all about survival. And the only way you're going to survive is if everybody comes together. So the falling of the empire is crucial to the change that needs to come. Because it can't come until it falls.
Tess, I'm glad that you said that, because that is sort of an echo. And Chuck, we're supposed to be talking about choice, right? Are we off task?
No, go for it.
All right. I'll try to circle us back around there
But
eventually.
right, I want to make sure, because you brought in the spirit of hope, and I want to make sure that
Yes.
you got to say that too. Yeah.
Well, it's, Tess, what you just said about, when it falls, that brings people together, because we have to talk about how we're going to survive.
Right.
And I just read a wonderful article on Roar Mag. Reflections on a Revolution is a web news source run by Jerome Roos, who's a PhD in, I believe, political science in Europe somewhere. And it's a wonderful site. And one of the great articles there was about all of this fear and apprehension we have about things going bad, that we're trying to control with violence, coercion, and militarize this, that, and the other. But what if, when you think about it, when all of that is done with, what's left is not a nightmare, but beauty.
Well, exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
When the things change when the empire falls. So what we're going through now is the fiddling, while
Right.
everything's burning, and the noise and the distraction.
Right.
But once we come through that, then that's when everyone will say, but what is it we need to do to survive?
Exactly, and that's, I think, one of the things that, we're not sure where we're going with our stories. If we were, this would be a boring project. But I think one of the spirits that we have as we go into Global Revolution Comics is there's the Buddhist admonishment about when you feel like you're going to lose your temper and blow up, that you need to imagine yourself as a spent, exploded hull. And, just rehearse your way through that anger and let it blow out and feel how it is after. And maybe you can skip it and get to where you need to be.
Or don't sweat the small stuff.
That too, yeah.
Well, I mean,
And,
I just went through that with a guy in the post office.
Okay.
I was number 1 in line, he was number 2, he was ranting, raving and screaming and raising his voice, and I hate this post office, and I finally I just turned around to him very kindly, and I said, don't sweat the small stuff. I said, you could be dead tomorrow, you could be under the ruins in Nepal, but you're upset because you're number 2 in line in the post office, and they sent your letter back?
Exactly.
So with this, do we not have the choice? Don't we have the right to be mad? Don't we have the choice to be mad and hold on to it if we want to?
Hold on to what?
Our anger,
What anger?
whatever. If we're angry because I'm second in line and the, post office guy is moving too slow, don't I have a right to be angry?
Yeah, but what was your hero?
The unionizer?
Well, Tess the unionizer deflated the whole situation. He laughed, everyone was laughing, he laughed.
So the revolution was about to happen, everything was about to explode and end it all, bringing us great beauty, and you deflated it, and we now have to wait longer.
Because the reality was, which comes back to your point, I actually wanted to turn around and kick his ass, okay? But instead of exploding and saying, oh, you just shut up, I just brought him down and said, come on now. And then when he got up there, everything was fine.
So let's come to the, the hopeful point that you guys are talking about, which is after all this happens and
Keep using that
everybody.
word hope with me, I don't like it. I don't like it.
I gotcha. Oh. Anyway, really, I do want to get this. So afterwards, right? We're looking at this society now that has been taken down. Yay us! We took down this empire. Yay us!
We didn't take it down,
No,
it fell down.
Okay.
It's
Yay
going
us!
down
We're
one way or the other.
Right,
Yay
exactly.
us!
It's
We're
coming
standing in the rubble of their empire. Yay us! We have to rebuild. All right. Where do we begin?
I would say with life. And by life, I mean all of it and how it interacts. We had this conversation over lunch, and I don't know if I can reconstruct it as well from exactly this entry point, but if folks are familiar with Jeremy Rifkin, which may not be, but he wrote a wonderful book called The Empathic Civilization, in which he excavates the history of collapses of complex civilizations, which has been going on since settled agricultural-based society, and always for similar reasons. There are very predictable tipping points, and we have plane crash history. When we look back at history, we see the kings and the armies and the wars, and we think that everything is because of things that people did. But the reasons people did the things were because the soil was degraded and because of other stuff, that when you get into that selfish, God complex, everything is because people do it mindset, you lose sight of those. So I think that the move to me now is to expand our visibility to all of the forces around us and let go of control as much as we want to, as much as we can, and say, there are some things that I'd like to control and create and do. I don't want to give them all up, but there's a lot of beauty. Let the world breathe. It will take care of you. This earth will take care of us all. And we have to learn to let her breathe.
So here we are at there, and we've all reached this point that we like exactly what you're at. You're saying, you know what, I just want each person to be able to have the room to breathe, all right? How as a society do we do that, all right? The question becomes tonight is choice good for society? And one of the things that brought this on for me was simply when I look at how much we embrace choice today. And truly, it's the one thing that can really never be taken from somebody, because you always have the choice of how you respond, right? You can learn to control your emotions. The one thing is somebody cannot take your mind. They can break you, okay, I see that there's those extremes, but in the general, choice is the one thing every man has, right? And if we go to the beginning of our Constitution, there's like inalienable rights.
But not so much women because of hormones.
What's that? Exactly. I'm glad you're there with me.
Or black people because they're only 3/5 of a man.
Oh, we're getting punchy over
I'm
here.
good. All right.
Well, you started it.
So wait, if black people are 3/5 of a man, what does that make a black woman with hormones?
It makes us really, really, really vulnerable.
Okay, so you're very vulnerable, right? And how do we handle a vulnerable situation?
I'm lost. I had a
I'm lost
sarcasm
too.
overdose
I
a little
don't.
while back.
Yeah, I know,
I'm
yeah,
lost
yeah.
too.
I am
We
too.
went somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah, I got you. So, I'm just really yet to hear, like, we hear this collapse, we hear the hope, right? And I'm looking at right now, here we are in this society that everybody values their own choice. Everybody values their opinion. Everybody says, my experience is correct. Everyone says, what I've learned and who I've learned it from, that must be correct because it makes sense to me. It's the doctorate program. Prove me right. And the more people I hang around, the more right I am.
Because you hang around people that are like you.
They are like you and suddenly are feeding you the same thing that already agrees with what it is you're saying.
Well, I don't know. I just, I don't know. I guess I would say I agree with some of that, but not all of it. I can only speak for myself. I don't necessarily think I tend to surround myself with people who are just like me, because for me it was boring. I like living in different places. I like exploring different cultures. I like being around different kinds of people. Why would I want to be around someone that's just like me all the time? You know, I'd just be alone. So, I think the way you described it for me, I think there's too much weight put on that. I think that the opinions that I have or the experiences I have, I'm not saying with an iron fist they're right. I'm just saying these are my experiences.
Right.
This was my reality. This is what I live with. And you may not be able to relate to that because it's not your reality. That's not something that you say is or isn't true, or isn't, or
And I
is or
think
isn't
that's
valid.
more like, how do we go from this society that is so convinced that what I've learned is correct, even after the collapse, because it's within the people. It's not necessarily all within the system, it's now within us. And how do we get that out of each one of us so that we can begin appreciating the experiences of one another instead of containing or, constraining?
Well, Chuck,
Can I shoot a few things here?
Yeah.
No, I don't
go
want
for it.
to stomp all over
I'll
you.
hold that thought.
But I think there's like a large degree where like the choice and everything that we have in this really free society, what I'm thinking of here is like a popular meme I saw a couple days ago about like environmentalists who were protesting at an oil rig. They were doing a flotilla of kayaks going out there to protest these. And
There you go.
and
That's a great example.
there
Yeah.
was the popular meme was like, oh, look at these idiots. They're out there protesting against oil in kayaks made of petroleum. What a bunch of jackoffs.
If only they bought my cats.
But it's like, what are they, petroleum's how you get places. Petroleum's how you do things. It's we still live in the world that we live in today, so even though we disagree with these things, we don't really have the choice so much to not use those things. And another example that, like me, I'm a minimum wage worker, in just like a service job. And it's like, I have my choice between many, I could go work at McDonald's, I could, pop over to Walmart. There's like hella jobs that I can choose between, but none of those, will give me any good health care or pay me a decent wage or anything. So it's like,
Tweedledee, Tweedledum.
yeah, right, yeah. The choice, there's choice there, but it's not like really
Well,
a
so
substantial choice.
but you're limiting your choice by your own boundaries, right?
No, it's not
You
his
could-
own boundaries.
Those actually are boundaries deliberately set up by other people.
Exactly.
You could go start your own business, right?
Good luck. It's
Hey, look, don't talk to me about, I get how difficult that is,
To
right?
start my own business.
But
well
you
now,
don't need mountains of money.
Chuck, can I get the floor for a minute?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
holding the
absolutely.
thought in. I want to build on
Yeah.
what Dave was saying.
Actually, I was going to twist it around a little
Okay.
differently, and
Okay, bring it on.
because we're you keep talking about this idea of a collapse or whatever, which isn't really the way that I choose to look at it.
Okay.
The idea of global revolution it's not like the empire collapses. It's the way I say it. It's like we overthrow the empire, and how we actually do that is by forming unions at our workplace and working together to build the power of the working class. And
Which America had the strongest working class of any nation before us.
Until
while
Reagan said, I
unions
want
are
to
so
go back to the
powerful,
gold.
yeah, exactly. While we still had strong unions, we had the strongest working class of anywhere else. That's not the case anymore,
So you feel that
But,
the
what-
decline of the unions are the decline of the companies themselves.
No, it's obvious we've been great for a lot of the companies. Like they've continued, their profits.
Yeah, yeah.
skyrocketed.
The government,
It's been
the
the
government
downfall
which
of the workers.
largely
It's been the downfall of
supports.
America.
Can I get recognized before we drift off back to this?
Yeah.
Because we already have been down this vein, and I'm sitting here holding a thought about this whole choice thing from both of you guys. And I'd like to start with Henry David Thoreau, because Chuck, you laid out something as axiomatic for us to then discuss that I want to go back and contest, which is this idea that we all build these self-reinforcing bubbles, which is something that you can watch happen sometimes on the internet. It brings together self-reinforcing communities. But in the spirit of Henry David Thoreau's quote that I'm going to mess up, to the effect of, it's my observation that if you suspect something, you're probably going to find it. You go where you're looking.
Yeah.
You can also see that the massive increase in interconnectivity makes it possible for people to figure out other points of view much faster than we ever have before.
Yes.
When something's not making sense to somebody, you watch them figure it out much faster than they ever would. So that's a wonderful thing. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring in was that, you have this question we're supposed to be operating under as a frame of, is choice good for society?
It was just
Which-
some random
it's-
thing that came up this afternoon.
it's a
It really
starting
had
point.
that point. Right.
It's a
that's all I
starting
wanted to
point,
say,
so I'm trying to start usefully from it, because clearly it's so broad as to be meaningless. So in order to have any useful
Exactly.
discussion, we have to get a little more specific what we
Right.
mean by that.
Right.
And what Dave is, when Dave was talking about as a minimum wage worker, you have all kinds of choice of the various crappy jobs you might want to do around town. And you can come and go, the managers don't care, that's kind of the situation. I think this is where it's very important for us to understand that our choices are limited. Number one, and we don't like to acknowledge this, but they're limited by choices made elsewhere by other people.
Yes, they are.
You'll get into these debates about fossil fuels, and inevitably somebody will say, you put your gas in your car, don't you? That makes you a hypocrite. No, I don't have a plan. Tesla just came out with them, and they just open sourced all their patents. So,
There's a plan.
we are stuck with decisions made elsewhere for us by people that have the capacity to make them. And those are often very quietly made in ways that remove choice from us that we're not supposed to realize it's been removed.
And that's the point I was making before about being in the room and listening to the conversation. But what's publicly stated has nothing to do with what's being said in the room.
Exactly.
And to me, that actually was where I was trying to go with this. I really would like people to understand that we really don't have the choices we have today. I made a comment the other day that I don't think as a consumer that I have the choices that I think I should have. What do you mean? You can do everything? Yeah, because I choose, I look at, and go, no, I really don't. I don't think that we have choice. I do believe that if there is an inalienable right endowed by mankind, by its creator, whether you choose to believe in a creator or not, but the one thing given to every single person is choice. And when we start to take that away from a person, we're either in the position of being their dictator, their controller, or their, that point of manipulation. It's very difficult to actually have a society in which some of our choices must be agreed upon that we can't do. That we actually have to get to the point where we are saying, you know what, you're right, I'll give up my right to make that choice for the good of all of us. So that's really where I'm going at, but then I went much more to a very personal level today. And it's more why it is that we actually choose to hold on to anything negative ourselves, right? Because we can choose the thoughts that we entertain, we can choose the thoughts that we hold on to, and the thoughts that we nourish. Or we can choose the ones that really don't do much benefit for anybody. And that is a choice. And the only way I truly see of helping create a truly free society is for us to have a conversation around what choices are you willing to surrender, right? Because if they're taken from us or we're told, that's very oppressive. I don't know how to have that whole conversation necessarily, but you just kind of brought it back around where I intended to start it today.
And I think one of the parlor tricks of power is to control the choices that people perceive themselves to have.
Right.
And billions of dollars are invested in keeping us in an environment in which we are given choices that are meaningless, counterproductive, and conflicting.
Well, and that was the beauty of the Matrix.
Yeah.
That was the beauty of the Matrix, because that's exactly what you're talking about. And then you had, which was the character, who's the character? He said, yeah, okay, I know it's not staged, but it's really good. And I'm okay with that.
Right.
And that was a choice. That was a choice he made. I want to, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
So
ignorance is bliss.
let's take a quick break. When we come back now, we'll talk about, do people get the right to choose how they use their own resources?
Ooh. We're going to have to start with what constitutes your own resources.
I saw the look bounce from your eyes, and then I heard him.
And we are going to the court of public opinion here, and we are going to discuss, do people have the right, how they can use their own resources? But I first understand that before we can have that conversation on our show in our studio, before we can have that conversation, we must go by Chris's rules, which says we have to figure out what a resource is, and apparently, like when I say, like we have resources, like this kind of show, and I'm like, come on, you've got really good things to talk about, and he says, I'm bringing a dude, and I'm like, I'm sorry, we can't accommodate the dude. He says, too bad, you're accommodating the dude, and I'm going, what happened? I thought these were my resources, but let's talk about how resources aren't necessarily resources.
Well, I don't think that's how I would tee it up, Chuck. Where I actually was going was, you said, do I have the right to use my resources, which brings in the question of, well, what makes them yours?
Right.
Which is why we have militaries and wars. You know, people think about how they're interacting with their environment, and that's the central problem that we have. And I think, I've seen this analysis come from a number of different people who put together various big picture historical analyses to make certain points. From a variety of places, people come back to, you know what, a lot of the problems that we are so up against the wall with today, you could trace right back to large-scale agriculture and settled civilization. Because that is the point at which you have a group of people that, because they are settled and dependent on agriculture, hierarchies develop, and people have spare time, and they start thinking of themselves as belonging to a land base and as a rival land base over there. That's where people really get pitted against each other. And that construct and that way of thinking about the world that we get put into by engaging in that practice is what causes us to overconsume relative to the way the whole dance of life is supposed to balance and go on. You know, the natives of this continent, North and South America, who got here 15, 20,000 years ago, when the Europeans got here, the place was in great shape. They had been living the way they were living for a very long time. And in less than 500 years, we're up against the wall, the way we're living. When we got here, you couldn't put a boat through the water in Cape Cod because it was that full of cod. And so, you know, when people talk about, well, their anxieties about this collapse have to do with scarcity, and well, what are we going to do for food? And it was so hard before we rose above that condition. I'm like, are you looking at this? Because they don't look like people that are worried about where their next meal is coming from to me at all. We had to kill all that buffalo for them to worry about food.
We're even shooting them on the thruway.
Yeah, so it really, all of these frameworks and ways of even having a discussion happen within this shadow realm. That is the bubble of the built environment we got used to building when we started doing agriculture and fields. And you hear different people in different wisdom traditions try to get their head around why this is wrong. And you can read Socrates and Plato's transcription and the metaphor of the cave. And you can listen to the Zen masters convey the same idea by saying, do not mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon. We had a point where we started to absolutely build up. And we can only afford a certain amount of that. And that is fine. Because it's so much better not to bother with any more of it than we need. Life is so much nicer.
We're already past that.
Oh, we're way past it.
Yeah,
We're
that's
way
what I'm
past
saying.
it.
It's gonna.
Yeah, we can either fight that, fear it, and you know, this is another one. The Roman senator, Seneca, said, Ducum volentem fata nolentem trahunt, which is,
Get me a Big Mac.
you know your Latin. The fates lead him who will, he who won't, they drag.
Lead, follow, get out of the way.
I don't see it quite as that. But it's about the spirit in which you face your circumstances.
Well, you know, again, my belief in what is going to happen doesn't necessarily defeat my spirit. Because it's something that repeats itself over and over and over again. And if you have an understanding of that, then I think you won't have the despair. It's not knowing that leads to the despair, because you're in panic mode, you're in fear mode.
Yes.
You start to act like a lemming, and all these things happen. But if you know, I mean, when Russia invaded Crimea, the first thing that went through my mind was, okay, there goes the Crimean War again. You know what I mean? That was not new.
Yeah.
That was not new. That fight over that same land's been going on forever, and we know the Russian Empire is falling. We don't have the Soviet Union anymore.
Right.
We don't have it anymore. But the people have disappeared.
No.
I mean, so I don't think it's something that you feel bitter about. I don't think it's something you feel ashamed. I think you should take that as knowledge and say, we're a part of history, and this is history, and we keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Don't just give up,
Exactly.
and I don't tolerate fools.
Do I have time to say a piece?
Yeah, we got 1 minute before we go to a break.
Well, yeah, just it's your initial question of like what choice do you have over how you use your own resources. If you think about like the tar sands oil stuff, the pipeline and everything, and it's like, well, there are all these great resources, and we got to use them. But like the only reason those resources are under the control of the people that they're under the control of now is because they murdered people to get those. They slaughtered a bunch of people initially. Like those aren't your resources. So like sometimes when people talk about this thing about like, you can frame it as choice. We should have choice of what to do over these resources, but it's actually force. It's we're exercising force over these other people.
How long do the sins of the father pay upon the sins?
Forever.
Right. So we either
until they're made up for it.
Now, how do you make up for that?
Okay.
You can't.
I think you can.
No, you
You
can't.
can. You can.
How?
You can. And I would defer to people of color who have their own feelings on this, but I look at the situation in this country that just in the past year I've had to go through my own growth, learning, and you examine your own attitudes and you think, well, I grew up in an Eldridge Cleaver, and I feel like I have worked through the racism. And you're like, nope, there's more. You had no idea. And you have to work out that toxicity and realize how bad the situation has become. And someone like Ta-Nehisi Coates will write a great piece about reparations, and there are discussions about what would be a dollar amount, what would be this and that. I don't think you can say it meaningfully in a dollar amount, but you can certainly say it in terms of the circumstance of a community and in terms of the authorship and the place that they have among the collective.
Right.
You can say it in those terms, and you can certainly say that these are people we need to honor more.
So,
which is under that is respect.
Yeah.
It's really about, money's great, but what it really is, as I thought while in Florida for a week, holy crap, people out here in this heat picking cotton all damn day. No, do you understand what I'm saying? So that stuff doesn't, I think, and I've said to Chuck, I don't feel like I need to have that conversation. I feel like you expressed what I told Chuck I think needs to happen. You need to have your introspection. You need to examine your feelings and your actions and those things. There's nothing for me to teach you. And I don't mean it that way, but I think that the discussion at the table has to be you talking about what you think, what you believe. Because I can tell you about my experiences all day long, but that's really not you examining your feelings. And I think that group needs to have those conversations.
Oh, absolutely.
So we can have healing. It comes through the recognition of not only the pain, but the contribution.
It's not just an
And
emotional thing, though, Chuck. It's material.
Right. Okay.
It's material, circumstance.
So how do you materially fix anything?
Well,
How will material or money ever pay for life And we get to look at that and say, we should value life above money. And the point we start putting dollar signs to it, it starts to become a very, like, okay, so that's what it was? This was all about money? This
But
was so
that's-
much greater than money.
Okay, but has anyone other than yourself in this conversation tried to put a dollar sign to it?
No, you're saying material, right?
Yes, by material, and Thomas Jefferson said he was a materialist. And he did not mean it in the sense that we use materialism to say, like, love of mammon, you like stuff, you like things. What he meant was what I was talking about Plato's cave and getting lost in representations. What he's saying is, you're talking a lot of crap, King George. I'm interested in what the actual circumstance is.
Stop talking and do something.
Yeah, it's the circumstance. And we can definitely heal a circumstance. And I don't think, Chuck, that it is possible to understand what needs to happen in that area in a transactional way. It's not about paying for anything or trading or making up for a life. It is about, it's about how are we going to feel whole together.
So,
we can do that. That's
real
the
quick,
answer.
well, because we missed our last break, we're actually switching over at 8 o'clock. It's a hard switch, so we're gonna have to go ahead and end the show. We'll have to have this conversation a little bit more. I agree, there cannot be, put a dollar amount on. If I misunderstood by that material comment, that's something to pick up later on. Thank you guys for kind of tuning in. This was our first time at a new format. Real quick, thoughts? How to feel?
Get rid of that table.
I-
Second time I've told you that.
No, I actually.
Because you're tall.
Yeah,
I
well,
spent
no,
the
but
whole
that's.
Okay, let's have this
conversation
conversation
going
after
like
the break,
this.
please.
All right.